The California Supreme Court has ordered that a lower court must decide if Scott Peterson deserves a new trial because a juror withheld information about her past. Rochelle Neese served on the 2004 jury that convicted Peterson of killing his wife Lacey and unborn son Connor. What Neese failed to tell the court during jury selection was that when she was pregnant in the year 2000, she asked for a restraining order against her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, writing in the order application she, quote, fears for her unborn child. In Peterson's habeas appeal, he argued Miss Neese gave false answers to get on the jury because this case, like Miss Neese's past case, involved harm to an unborn child. The state Supreme Court, with its ruling, seems to agree that the issue needs to be reviewed. The state, on the other hand, says the argument, quote, borders on the ridiculous. Scott Peterson's sister-in-law, Janie, has been fighting for Peterson's release since his conviction.
She feared for the life of her unborn child. So, when you're looking to be seated as a juror in a trial where a pregnant woman was murdered, that's relevant information that needs to be presented to the court prior to being seated on that jury.
In 2017, the juror, Rochelle Neese, did an interview with the Modesto Bee, denying she lied to get on the jury.
Scott's appeal lawyers are making up this story. I did not lie to get on this trial to fry Scott. I did not. That was not my intention.
Scott Peterson's lead appellate attorney, Cliff Gardner, issued this statement to Court TV concerning the Supreme Court's ruling, saying, in part, we agree not only with the court's apparent concern about jury candor during the jury selection process, but with its recognition about how central the misconduct was to the ability of the jury to reach a fair decision in this case. There are 19 separate arguments made in Scott Peterson's habeas. The juror issue was the only one the court took notice of.
I'm a little surprised. I'm surprised that they only selected the jury misconduct issue, but we only need one. And if this doesn't succeed in state court, all those issues will be addressed in federal court. So it's still the beginning phases of a very long process, but we're confident in the end Scott will be granted a new trial.
This summer, the California Supreme Court overturned Peterson's death penalty sentence, but upheld his conviction. For now, Peterson is off death row, but remains an inmate at San Quentin State Prison.
All right, let's bring in Ted Rollins, Court TV anchor. I guess I shouldn't be shocked that it was Rochelle Neese is the juror that is in the midst of all this. During the trial, for those who watched it back in the day here on Court TV, she was the one that was being referred to as Strawberry Shortcake. And as I recall, many people were concerned that she might, have a crush on Scott Peterson because she was one of the younger female jurors. It turned out she didn't have a crush on Scott Peterson. But Ted, I'm interested first in just your response to this particular juror having been there for that entire trial and that entire case.
Well, I agree. We were watching this trial. You and I were both in the courtroom, and that was the one juror we thought, the defense has her, because she kept looking over at Peterson. Little did we know she was seething and staring at him, because after the conviction, she in the press conferences and when she was interviewed, she had some real hatred for the guy. It's interesting. This is a decision that this court made, the Supreme Court. This was the one thing that really did stick out as something that was wrong with the case. This was the strongest of 19 issues that Scott Peterson brought up in his habeas, and this is the one that the Supreme Court globbed onto.
All right, so there's two different appeals going on here at once. Explain it for us. And so we got the appeal, we've got the habeas state court. What's going on and what's next here?
Yeah, so you have a direct appeal, which can only appeal what happened at trial. And the Supreme Court looked at that and they said, you know what, we agree. He shouldn't have gotten the death penalty because of some other jury issues during voir dire and the death penalty. But they said, no, we're not giving you a new trial. We're upholding the conviction. So that's where this one sits. This one sits in Stanislaus County now. They have to make a decision. Do we want to retry the penalty phase against Peterson, go for the death penalty, or just let him go life without parole? The other side is this habeas. That's a totally separate appeal. And in the habeas, you can bring in new evidence, things that weren't brought in at trial. And in this habeas, this is where they brought up Michelle Neese, the juror, but they also brought up several other items that they thought needed to be looked at by this court, including new evidence surrounding Lacey walking the dog, about that burglary across the street, about a phone call from jail. I talked to Janie Peterson today a little bit about that other evidence that, by the way, the Supreme Court looked at and said, not compelling. They didn't go for it. Here's what she said.
Scott's habeas petition outlined evidence that wasn't heard in court. It outlined that Lacey was alive and walking the dog the morning that she went missing. This took place after Scott left for the day. If Lacey's walking the dog, Scott is innocent. It outlined information from the mailman that corroborates that Lacey was walking the dog. It further goes on to talk about the evidence that's been collected that Lacey confronted or encountered the burglars across the street. There was a burglary that occurred across the street the day that Lacey went missing. And, you know, we've been investigating this entire time, so we have 5 more years of information. So we're looking forward to our day in court so the public can hear that Scott is innocent.
So, Vinny, on the habeas section, the Supreme Court this week said, we agree with you on some level. We need more information on this juror issue. So what the Supreme Court has done, they have said it in order to show cause down to San Mateo County, saying, all right, you now tell us, the Supreme Court, why we shouldn't grant this guy a new trial. So what's going to happen is they'll have to file something by next month, November 13th, I think it is, and then that will start the back and forth. There'll likely be a trial or a hearing of some sort in San Mateo County. Whoever loses that will then send it right back up to the Supreme Court. They'll get it again, but this time they'll have the opinion of the lower court.
Yeah, this is unreal. In that habeas, they didn't bring up the owl theory like Michael Peterson did in North Carolina, did they?
No.
Okay, just want to make sure. Just want to make sure, because after the conviction, there's a lot of theories here. All right, now how about Scott Peterson? Because he's off death row now. Is he going to get moved out of San Quentin?
Well, technically, he is still on death row because that has not been processed yet, because Stanislaus County hasn't decided whether they're going to retry him. So by the books, he's still on death row, but the odds of him being on death row forever are very, very low. And the odds of them retrying are very low. So the bottom line is, let's say they say, no, we're not going to retry him. He'll now be life without parole. So he will be moved. He'll have to be moved out of San Quentin, because San Quentin is a medium security facility and then death row. So if you're not a death row inmate, you'll get bounced to one of the maximum security prisons in California. And
then he'll have to make all new friends when he goes there. I mean, that might be cruel and unusual. Let me ask you this. The people who were involved in the original trial, we know his attorney, right? We know him and his team. Are the prosecutors still prosecuting, and whatever happened to the judge? Because he was retired and then came back for this. Yeah, sadly, Alfred DeLucchi, the judge, passed away a number of years ago, so he's not involved. Rick DeStasa, one of the main prosecutors, one of the lead prosecutors, he became a judge, a military judge, actually. And I don't know if you remember Birgit Fladinger. She was one of the prosecutors that was brought in midstream to kind of shore up the case, and she had a great relationship with the jury. She's now the DA down in Stanislaus County, so it'll be up to her whether to retry him on the penalty phase. And as for Mark Garagos and his team, they're still around, but Scott is now being represented by Cliff Gardner out of Berkeley, who's a fantastic appellate attorney. All right. Ted Rowlands, all this information, but it's a little too scary, all right? You scared me tonight with this. We are, I mean, this is like a real issue, so we've got to keep following it. Ted Rowlands, who knows the story better than anyone, will stay on top of it for us. Thanks so much, Ted.